Welcome, everyone, to another episode of DNS Unfiltered. I'm Mikey Pruitt, joined by Joshua Copeland today. Joshua, how are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful. It's a beautiful day.
Beautiful day. I have been watching you on LinkedIn. You have what you call unpopular opinions. And I kind of think we're going to prove that they are quite popular opinions, but you're really poking the bear, so to speak, when it comes to cybersecurity and the things we all believe and all these truths we hold so close. Tell me about your strategy with your unpopular opinions.
So it really started about 4 years ago. I kind of was on LinkedIn and seen what I considered a lot of self-flipping ice cream cones where everything's awesome. Cybersecurity is great. Nothing's wrong. We're fantastic. And for me, I looked at it and went, no, there's still a lot of things that we can improve. There's a lot of, nuances that we're not dealing with. And instead of just sitting around complaining that nobody was talking about it, I took it upon myself to go ahead and at least start the conversation. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind on anything, but let's at least have a conversation about it. I might have a different viewpoint than you, but maybe you might have points that I hadn't considered. And just having a conversation makes it us as a community better.
Yeah, agreed. Conversation is the key. I've actually talked with people on this show from kind of adjacent industries of cybersecurity, like corporate espionage. And the whole time I was thinking, like, wow, we should talk a lot more because these are very related things that I don't think get joined together a lot. So it's good to see you starting those conversations. What would you say is one thing that people are getting wrong about Cybersecurity Day? Let me say, what is one of your favorite things that people are getting wrong? Because you have quite a few.
I think one of my favorite things to talk about that we're doing wrong is we're doing hiring completely wrong. So you kind of have to take this back and peel it back in a bit of layers. We have HR personnel who are doing what they think is best in screening out candidates based off of, very easy delineators, things like certifications or college degrees. We have HR uh, personnel managers, the people who are the actual hiring managers, who are writing generic job descriptions that don't really tie back to the job, or worse yet, they're just going out and finding another role that's similar to it and copying and pasting the job role in. And you're creating job descriptions that don't match what you're hiring for. So the HR folks are screening the wrong things. And then you have recruiters who are trying to find folks who don't match the job descriptions or who match the job descriptions but don't match the actual job. And you create this entire circus of everyone's chasing jobs and there's a ton of talent out there and there are positions open, but we can't seem to get the pieces to match together because we have really weird requirements like it's a entry level SOC analyst and they want CISP and 5 years experience and a master's degree. Now, anybody who's sat in the SOC as a tier one analyst knows that you don't need any of those things. The most you might need is a security plus just to, demonstrate that you have basic understanding of how security architecture works. But we put all these extra things in. So what does HR do? HR does what HR is supposed to do. They get 1,000 applications. They have to whittle it down and they go, okay, who has the highest credential? Let me get that to that person. And we get into these positions where we're not hiring the right people for the right roles. And it's because we're doing a lot of things just start to finish wrong. So the very first thing we need to do is, as hiring managers, we need to personally rewrite every job description so that you could use that as a yardstick to measure them for an annual review 1 year later after hiring. If you have your job description and you cannot do that, that's on you and you're part of the bad hiring practice.
So you said that was one thing we need to do to kind of fix that. What are some of the other things?
We really need to look at why are we putting things on job descriptions? Like we put must have a bachelor's degree. Do we really need a bachelor's degree to do that job? Do you really need a bachelor's degree in a particular field for that job? Some of the best analysts I've had over the course of my career came from completely different fields. My best analysts absolutely ever had their undergraduate degree in marketing, which doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense for a cybersecurity analyst until you realize that all marketing is social engineering.
True.
In both cases, they're trying to get you to click the button. One is to click the buy button on their product. The other one is trying to click the button so I can launch malware into your environment. But it's the same skill set. I had another one that they had an undergraduate degree, 18th century French literature. And you go, what the heck does that have to do with cybersecurity? But when you sit and think about how do they do their research reports doing that, they have to get into very nitty gritty details, dive into the very small minutia specifics of what makes this 18th century French literature writer different from the one next to it, and what the nuances are, and how you contextualize that to the time frame, which is exactly what you do as a SOC analyst. You're looking at what's this weird thing that's different, contextualize that. We have folks that come in from military background, law enforcement. They're very good at doing triage. Figuring out what's the most important thing I have to deal with now. The same with medical folks. You know, that's their lifeblood, is doing triage. What's the thing that I need to stop the bleed first? So we have all these areas that have really big transferable skills that we don't look at because they don't fit neatly in the traditional box.
That is a very interesting way to think of it. So, first of all, you have job seekers that are missing the job postings because they don't apply to them because they're so outlandish or
Yep.
incorrect. Then you have the job posters that don't necessarily know what they're looking for. I'm curious, would it just be crazy to seek marketing specialists for a job? Like write the job description for the marketing personnel and then just change the title to cybersecurity analyst.
I mean, those are things that you can do. For me, it's always been one of those things. When I come into a new organization, I get every job description they have that falls underneath me, and over the course
You
of
go
about
rewrite them.
2 to 3 months, I rewrite them to what that job actually does. And then I look at what skills do I need to be able to fill that job, and what level of skill do I need for that? Is this something that these are, 3 must-have skills that I have to have, and these are 3 skills that they can grow into as we get that person on and bring them in, mature them, get them some education, and kind of just reframe it to where I'm looking at very straightforward, hard skills, not, you know, must have 5 years experience with this tool and must have this certification and this degree, because those things just lead you down the wrong path.
I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised that you started with hiring. But if you look
Yeah.
at all the problems in technology and cybersecurity, it is kind of a people problem. Like the people aren't being matched properly with the roles that are required. You
Well,
didn't like
when you,
you didn't go into like the technology. You didn't talk about like malware, anything like that. You went straight to people. Tell me more about this.
so when you look at, you have people, process, and technology, right? Those are your 3 major areas. And technology, that's going to change every few months. The things I was doing as a technologist 5 years ago, if I tried to do that now, I would look at myself like I was crazy. You know, why would you remotely be thinking about doing that? Why are you still running antivirus and not running an EDR? Like, are you insane? So the technology piece is always going to change. So that really means that you need to focus on those 2 other pieces, people and process. Am I developing processes that are documented, repeatable, and what I call smoke proof? So if I pull the person who does that out and make them take a mandatory 2 week vacation, does everything fall around? Or can I have somebody use the documented processes in place and move forward and keep working? And that's important for a couple of reasons. One, when you go on vacation, I want you to be on vacation. I don't want me to have to call you 6 times because you're the only person that knows how to do this thing. From a security perspective, I want to make sure that I don't have any single points of failure, just single points of success. If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, what in my security organization is going to fail because you're not here? If I don't fix that, that's on me, because that's my job, is to make sure that we're resilient. So that's kind of that process. And then looking at the people, how do I get people to come in? How do I get them to stay and want to stay? I'm a big proponent of, I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to train you, I'm going to mentor you, and I want you to be able to leave and go get a job someplace else, but I want you to stay because you want to stay, not because you have to stay.
Good advice. You have been in a lot of roles around technology and cybersecurity over your career. Um, Now you're in more of like a managerial style role, I guess. You're the
Mhm.
director of cybersecurity. So I assume that's very close to like a CTO or like a CISO or
Yeah.
something of that nature. Like you're really in the upper management level. And I'm curious, when people like your peers, like other executives and presidents and VPs or whatever in companies, when they talk about needing more um, investment in security, where do you think that money should go first?
So it really comes down to understanding your business. And this is where a lot of cybersecurity leaders fail, is that we're really, really good at the bits and bytes, but we suck at the dollars and cents and business risk. Not cybersecurity risk, but business risk. So that's where you have to transition from being that extremely technical SME into that executive leader, is learning the business of your organization. So I need to know how business operates, what tools that they're using, how they're doing their day-to-day business, and where my risks are associated with that, because that should be driving where I'm putting money towards security. I can go and pull down the, NIST 853 or pull down ISO 2701 or pull down CIS benchmarks and say, this is what we have to do. But that's not tailored to my business or what my needs are or what our risk tolerance might be. We might be a startup that's willing to play a little looser than a Fortune 100 company that has shareholders and has to do SEC filings. So you have to really come back to go, where does it make sense to spend money on security? Where does it not make sense to spend money on security? And how do you get kind of the balance between the two? It's well known that the more secure something is, the harder it is to use. The easier it is to use, the less secure it is. Well, you have to find that kind of happy medium of that friction point to where it's enough friction that you're secure enough, but not so much friction that really smart and sometimes really lazy humans find ways around your security. Because I'll show my age and go back to, when Microsoft Exchange first came out with file filtering, and you could say, I'm not going to allow zip files through my Exchange server anymore. Well, it took all of about 24 hours for folks to figure out, if I change the file extension to .txt, it'll go through just fine. People will find a way around your security. So our job is incumbent to understand what they're doing and build security around the practices that they need to do in a way that is not so full of friction that I'm able to actually get them to do what I want them to do the right way and not find ways around my security.
So, would you say the main job of a cybersecurity leader in an organization, whether no matter what the title is it to take the frameworks that are given by the industry and adapt those, groom those so that they match the business use case?
Absolutely. Ultimately, I look at any senior leader in cybersecurity as, first and foremost, your job is to be a translator. Translate cybersecurity problems and cybersecurity risk into what's the risk to the business. Yes, I can tell you that I have, a critical vulnerability on this server and I need to patch it, and that's going to take down our operations for, you know, 30 minutes. But if I don't contextualize that and go, well, this server is actually buried 3 layers deep behind my defenses, there's fairly limited exposure to it. And oh, by the way, we're a retail entity and it's, between Thanksgiving and
It's Black
Christmas.
Friday. Yeah.
And every minute that we're down is hundreds of $1,000s in sales. So maybe my risk tolerance for that during that particular point in time, I can go, yes, it's a critical. Yes, the CVE score tells me I should patch this right now. But in my environment, it's really not that high. And to my business, it's even worse if I try to fix it than if I wait and fix it when my business demand isn't so high. And that's kind of the special sauce that really successful cybersecurity leaders and CISOs have is they understand the business and they can talk business, because we're not going to get CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and all the other CXO type folks to understand cybersecurity and IT. It's just unreasonable. But we can absolutely and should absolutely understand business, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, what your role is. The business is why you exist. If there is no business, there is no cybersecurity. If there is no cybersecurity, you have no job and no reason to exist. So your goal should be to enable the business and have it operate in the most safe, secure, and sane way possible. That potentially, if you're doing it right, opens the aperture and becomes not a cost center, but a revenue generating center, where you can say, because we are secure, because we are better than our peers in this area, and we have these attestations, now we've opened up our market. And that's a huge differentiator between us and our next level peer. And our customers feel more safe buying our product or using our service, because now we have shown them that not only do we take it seriously, that we care about their security and our security, we have the kind of the paper trail and the receipts, so to speak, to back that up.
So let's talk about, dive a little deeper into translation, specifically hype words that we hear a lot these days, like AI, zero trust, automations. So what do you think is like very overhyped right now, and what is underhyped?
I think zero trust and AI are overhyped right now. Um, Zero trust, because if you really peel back the layers on it, it's least privilege, which is something we've been talking about since before I even entered the field of cybersecurity. It's just a specific methodology and plan to do least privilege in a way that we typically have not done it. So I think zero trust is overhyped in that it's something we should have been doing for the last 2 decades. Um, AI, everyone says, now improved with AI. All right, get under the hood. Show me what AI you're using. Show me that it's not just regex with AI slapped over top of it as a name. AI is great, does a lot of things. I work for an AI company. We're doing wonderful things in the customer experience space, but there are good and bad with AI. You have to implement AI in a way that is safe for your organization, that has the appropriate guardrails, because ultimately everybody has a smartphone. Everyone. There's AI on your smartphone. You have access to Claude. You have access to Open AI's ChatGPT. You have access to Gemini. You can take a picture of what's on your screen and put it in there. How are you using AI in your environment in a way that accelerates your business in a way that is safe? So are you going in, you want to use AI in your business and you want your folks to use it because it's going to get them time back to work on real legitimate problems. All right, go ahead, get licensing for your folks, get an enterprise license where you can control what they upload in, what they don't upload in. You can do some data loss prevention. You can put right and left guardrails around it. Excuse me. And that you can actually control to a degree how it's being done. And you can get things like BAAs and, zero data retention policies built with that provider so that they're not using it to train their material on. And that source code that you're having them debug doesn't show up in your competitor's search while they're trying to figure out their own debugging. So AI is overhyped, but it is something that is absolutely going to be a game changer.
So what do you think is underhyped? What do you think are things that people don't put as much stock in as they should?
Um, I'm going to be
This is
maybe
going to
a
be an
bit contrary,
unpopular opinion.
maybe contrary to some other folks. I would say patching and endpoint hardening. Patching, we have routinely done it very poorly. Go to any organization and ask for a report and see what their mediums and lows look like compared to their criticals and highs, how long it takes them to patch. Almost every major breach has been because there well-known, pre-existing, unpatched vulnerabilities that there were patches for. Um, so that's huge. And then we have endpoints that we have out there that there are tools available to do hardening on your devices. There are a plethora of standards, whether you want to go super intense and do like something like a dissect, or you want to go something like a CIS benchmark 1 or 2. There are tools that will help you get that, and they're super easy to implement. One of the ones that's absolutely phenomenal is Sention. Will help you basically harden your entire environment in about 30 minutes to CIS benchmarks. That's something that we've typically not done really well. And when you look at all these attacks, you're looking at, unpatched vulnerabilities that get them in, and then they use misconfigured systems or systems that are left in default configurations that are unsecure to lateral through a system. These are basic things that they're not new. They're not crazy. They're not the bright, shiny thing that you're going to hear at Black Hat or RSA, but they're fundamentals that we've just not really done well because it's hard.
Do you think it's more? I don't want to use the word lazy, but it's the only one I can think of. Do you think it's just like this patching specifically? Do you think it's just there are more higher priority items on a list than patching? Because I mean I've dealt with this personally. Like we have, everyone's on a desktop or laptop or whatever, and their phones, and there's a software update like every month or two.
Yeah.
And it's usually reliant. Most orgs probably just rely on the user to do that process for themselves at this point. But then we were talking about backend systems. Like there's a lot of software that is out there. You can use Shodan right now and find unpatched, SQL servers here and there and
Oh yeah.
whatever else you want to find, just all over the place. But is it laziness or is it just misconfigured priorities? Like what's going on?
So I wouldn't say laziness because that maybe imply some malintent, which I don't think there is. I can give you some like specific examples. I know there is a water system in South Louisiana that is running on a Windows 2000 machine that has never been patched ever and has been rebooted twice since it was
Hopefully it's air
installed.
gapped or something. Oh my
It is
gosh.
not air gapped. It has public facing IPs. You can find it on Shodan.
God.
And the reason why they haven't done anything is because they're afraid that a patch is going to take down the entire water treatment system. So freshwater and sewage, because they got a blue screen. Like,
Don't they
that's
see the
something that,
alternative though? Like the alternative is that somebody hacks in and does that anyway.
well, but then you can point the finger that it was a bad actor that did it and it wasn't
Mm.
a self inflicted gunshot wound. It's no different than the school system that had their HVAC for decades running on a Commodore 64. Like, it was running on a Commodore 64 because the cost to replace it was like $2 million. Or we can keep using this thing that has been running just fine for the last 20 years. They eventually had to replace it because the person that had been maintaining it was a single point of failure and was retiring and moving away. So there are instances like that where we're scared to touch it because if it breaks, we're worried about the second and third order effects. And there are cases where, to your point, I have 12 things on my list. I'm in a small organization where my IT and cybersecurity team is 2 or 3 people. I don't have a tool that's doing, patch management for me. I'm just going to focus on the really important critical server systems and, hopefully the endpoints will eventually take care of themselves. It's not malicious. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's pure negligence, but it's a resource constraint.
So we're kind of bumping up against this topic of the cybersecurity culture, or that culture does matter in cybersecurity, instead of the tools and the tech. And I think this is what at least what I get across from a lot of your posts, your unpopular opinions are really talking more about the culture. And this also
Mm-hmm.
ties back into the hiring process that you started with. Like what is it about the culture in cybersecurity that keeps us vulnerable to attacks?
I think it's a lot to do with, rightly or wrongly, the industry has what I call a hero complex where everyone, because we're often undermanned and under budgeted, has to work well beyond an 8-hour workday. It's not uncommon to see folks in cybersecurity working 10, 12 hours or even longer if there's an actual incident going on. That's going to lead to things like burnout, which when you're doing that, things are going to fall by the wayside. If I have, 12 hours to do something and I have 15 hours of work, 3 of those hours aren't going to get done. And that's just going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling to some point, something breaks. So until we can start working with our business side to really illustrate what the problems are or document why things aren't getting done in a way that is what we ideally want, we're still going to have those problems across the board. So really it comes down to helping leadership understand why it's important to their business, understand where the risk is to the business, not just, the cyber risk. Because I can tell you all day long that, I have a edge router with a critical vulnerability because it's a Fortinet that has yet another vulnerability that allows somebody to get root from the outside. That means nothing to the business. They go, okay, so what? Now, if I tell you that once they have that, then they have access to all of our traffic, including all of your intellectual property. Oh, magically light bulbs go off and they go, oh, our intellectual property, the stuff that we care about and that we can get fined, sued, or get a lose our business over. That's now all of a sudden important. So it's making that translation becomes the huge thing.
Yeah, it's a communication barrier between the senior technical cybersecurity leaders and the other business cohorts they have. It's scary. Like, oh man, I'm curious. From your early days of your work history, I believe you worked at AT&T. I'm looking at your LinkedIn right here. AT&T, a few other roles. You've been in the military. What are some of the experiences in those orgs and those situations that shape the way you think? Because it sounds like more cybersecurity leaders need to grasp things like you do. So, what are some of the experience you had that developed the way you think?
Um, I have to give a lot of credit to the military, particularly the Air Force, for kind of crafting the way that I look at issues. Because I look at it from that leadership perspective that they're taught from early PME all the way through your senior level PMEs, where you need to groom your next group of folks. So as a individual in your team, you should know the job of the person below you and the job of the person above you. I should be able to do that because ultimately, if you're the only person that knows how to do something, you're not promotable. I can't move you someplace else that will be more to your liking, potentially has better pay, better hours, better benefits, because you're the only person that knows that. The civilian side of the house tends to like to hoard knowledge and, create their little fiefdoms where they look at it as job security. And to some degree, that's true. If you're the only person who knows how to do that, that makes you, a key person in the organization, but also makes it to where you will never be anything other than that person. So developing folks so that they can actually go through the ranks and understand where they want to go, what they want to do. I could have somebody that's a SOC analyst right now, but really, really wants to do, systems engineering. And if I know that, I can vector them to a place where I'm going to get the most work out of them and that they're going to be happy. And if I can do those two things, life is good. So by taking kind of that lead with, intent and understand that you need to grow your folks, not just necessarily what a lot of organizations are doing now. They want to hire fully already developed, great, mid and senior level folks. And you can do that for a short period of time, but at some point you've got to start having a pipeline. You've got to get folks that are coming in at that junior level to grow that. So your folks that are the mids can eventually become seniors. Because if you don't do that, they're just going to go someplace else and you're going to go through that whole process again.
Do you think we're losing a lot of the junior talent because of like automations and AI and like losing our pipeline of human pipeline?
Um, AI in that role is interesting in that I think AI is going to be very much like robots were to the automotive industry 70 years ago. You know, when robots first came out for the automotive industry, people cried that the robots are taking our jobs. You know, we're not going to have any jobs left. 70 years later, we still have people that work in factories, building cars, doing things right alongside of robots. And then we also created a whole new line of work of people who engineer, build, maintain, and program those robots to do those things. So I think it's a case where AI is going to absolutely change the way we do things, but it's not necessarily going to eliminate a job here or a job there. It's going to change the way that job is done. I think across the board, and I think this applies to any field, the folks who are going to do really, really well in the next 10 years are the folks who are going to be really good at doing prompt engineering into AI tools. You know, the folks who can take that and leverage it to a new level. Smart businesses are going to look at AI as a tool to free their humans to do more advanced things. Bad businesses are going to look at AI as a tool to reduce headcount. And eventually that bill will come due because ultimately, I say this a lot, that AI will not testify for you in court and AI will not do your jail sentence. Somebody ultimately is going to have to be the person that's held accountable for all the things that AI does. So you have to keep a human in the loop when you're doing any of those things. And that's where the jobs are going to shift and change, is maybe not being the person who's looking at 1,000, false alerts, but verifying that 1,000 false alerts that the AI said were a false alert actually were false alerts.
I've been on this mission recently where I'm trying to like automate myself out of a job. And I think that's the way organizations are going. Like that would be, it seems like it's the future is where a person maintains a group of robots or AI agents or
Mm.
something of that nature. And I think, the timeline is probably long enough to where we can make a transition into that style of work. And like you were saying, the people, your current position, know what your boss does and know what the people that you're managing do, be able to do those. And then also working towards systematizing and automating what could be automated away is seems like where we're headed.
Yeah, and that goes back to earlier where I'm talking about process. Is your process documented and repeatable? If it's a documented, repeatable process that doesn't require human judgment, that's absolutely something you should automate and use AI for, because that frees your humans to go do all the things that aren't getting done. You know, I will put money that there is not a single organization out there that says they have enough people in their cybersecurity organization that they have people that are just sitting around not doing anything for any portion of the day. I would put money on it because everyone's underfunded, understaffed, and by using those AI capabilities, we can get that time for people back to do those things that we just weren't doing before. Things like patch management, where we can potentially have some AI capabilities thrown in there, some system hardening where you might do some AI monitoring and remediation. And you have a person who now is not doing those tasks and able to do three of the other things they weren't able to do. And writing actual real documentation so you can do more automation and create a better ecosystem for your organization.
Yeah, we're almost in a place where time is becoming more abundant. And then we can use that if we use that time properly to, start dealing with the backlog of things. What I used to call shaving the yak. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah.
So, I actually just yesterday, I was trying to get a certain automation done in N8N, which is like a node based automation
Mhm.
platform like Make or Zapier, and I really wanted it to transcribe video or sorry like remux videos from a very big file into a small file. So in order to do that, I needed FFmpeg on that server. Well, the Docker container didn't have it. So in order to get that, I needed to change N8 into a Q mode type of thing. And then I needed to build my own Docker file and make like a custom version of N8N. So I was shaving the yak so that I could get to this one place. That finally happened, thank goodness. But that it's like annoying, and I think that it's like daunting. Like, oh, to make that work, I actually have to do all these other things, and that is like not the laziness, but like the burden of having to go back and deal with the things that are troublesome or just time consuming. And I think you're building this culture, and I want to ask you about the culture that you're building on your teams. How do you maintain like morale when you're like under constant pressure with like alerts and incidents and the news, like the news cycle threats coming out? How do you specifically maintain that culture that you present so well in your LinkedIn posts?
Goes back to you have to know your people. And that means that you actually have to put time and effort as a leader to actually talk to your individual employees. Is you need to know what motivates them, because what motivates one person on your team absolutely is not what motivates another person. Somebody might be just, you did a great job on that, and that's enough recognition for them to, propel them forward. Somebody else might be like, you know what, I seen that you worked, it's Wednesday and you've already worked 40 hours this week. Take tomorrow off. Work's going to be here the next day. Rest, recharge. Don't put PTO in. Just take the day off and kind of recharge your brain. Giving them, legitimate pathways to where they want to be and understanding what they want and helping them along that way. Even if it potentially means that you're helping them to go to some other part of your organization or another organization altogether. What I've found is when I do that, 5 years from now, I might be hiring that person back in a new role. I've had folks who have worked for me multiple times over the course of my career. Um, I had one guy that at 4 separate roles, he's worked for me
You
at
really
some point or another.
You're really just saying to be more human.
Yeah,
And I think all this AI and automation stuff will hopefully give us the opportunity to be more human because the other stuff will be mostly handled, I guess.
yeah.
That's the rose colored glasses view, at least.
That's the rose-colored glasses view. The other side is that we're going to have bad businesses. You're going to use that to reduce headcount and increase stress. I think long term, those businesses will sort themselves out as they often do. Um, and it's just understanding, ultimately cybersecurity is ironically deeply human focused. Everything that we do in cybersecurity revolves around people, whether it's a person in your environment who is going to be the person who's 100% of the time going to click the phishing link, or it's the SOC analyst who has done 200 alerts in the last hour and a half. You know, it's deeply human because the systems don't run themselves. And even with AI, you still have to have someone validating. Someone has to be able to make that decision, be in charge. And until we truly catch on to how human cybersecurity really is, we're still going to bump up to those things where everything's about the tech, about the tech, about the tech.
What advice would you give somebody that wants to grow into a role, a leadership role in cybersecurity?
Two really big pieces of advice is say yes to things. When someone offers you an opportunity, even if it's outside of your comfort zone, say yes. I'm even in cybersecurity right now because I said yes to a extra duty in my first role in the military, and that's how I ended up in cybersecurity. It was not intentional. It was not what I had joined the military for. Um, and then the second one is spend a lot of time on building your communication and business skills. Those are going to be the two most critical things as you progress into leadership roles that will differentiate you from the really, really smart techie guy compared to the smart techie guy who can speak to the board.
Yeah, those are different skill sets. I had one more question. Is there anything that's like on the horizon that you see, like threat wise, that you think is scary? Something that keeps you up at night?
I think deep fakes are the thing that keeps me up the most at night, just because they are scary good and they're only going to get better. There's the viral video that's going around of Will Smith eating spaghetti 3 years ago compared to Will Smith eating spaghetti this year. And
And it looks like
just
Will Smith eating
understanding,
spaghetti now.
yeah, now imagine how good that's going to be a year from now or 2 years from now. Um, I've done some cool things with, you know, readily available software of, you know, creating a fake version of my voice from existing podcast clips and things of that nature and generating artificial text of me. There's a video out on YouTube where I'm reading a synthetic story that was created by AI, and I'm not reading it. Fake AI me is reading it. And it's extremely passable to where, unless you really, really know me and know my vocal tone and inflection, it's absolutely passable. And I could probably get through most help desk who have heard my voice and go, yo, that's Josh. Let me just reset his password. And then with the level of deep fakery that we're able to do with video, it's going to be even more wild.
And that's why zero trust is important, even though it's overhyped.
Yeah.
Well, Joshua, where can people find you on the internet if they want to hear these unpopular opinions?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I am, www.linkedin/in/Joshua Copeland. And you can find my book on Amazon.
Yeah, what's the name of your book? I'm just curious how you're going to say it.
It is Unpopular Pinning, Burning Down the Bullshit to Rebuild Cybersecurity.
I've actually just ordered it. I can't wait for it to get here. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Mikey.